This is Lizzie from Let Zoe Spoil You.
And Sagira from Sagira Salutes You. And together, we are Newbie versus Weeaboo. Sagira, Newbie.
Lizzie, a Weeaboo.
It's Newbie versus Weeaboo.
Ahoy.
Heidi, hi.
Hello. So, yeah. Film.
Well, this was something that I hadn't seen, but I have seen things in this format before, so I was prepared for it to be different.
All right, well, ask your question if we're going to do this properly.
Yeah. So, Sagira, what did you think of the movie today?
Now, you know I don't like swearing on the podcast, but what the f*** did you make me watch?
So I remember having this conversation with the husband when we started watching it, and I just turned around to him and went, "It's gonna fucking kill me. She's just gonna be like, what the fudge are you making me watch?" And I'll be like,
no
"Oh,
clue." I'm literally watching the start of it going, what? I can't even section off my notes. I have no clue how to write about this. This is literally going to be an episode where you ask me questions like, what did you think about this bit? I go, I don't know. This is so odd. But go on, introduce what it is.
So, I mean, it's called Neo Tokyo, which is a blanket term for 3 shorts. The reason we watched it is obviously I'm introducing you, Sagira, to the wonderful works of Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who is my favourite director, who I absolutely love their style. And while I've seen all their movies, I thought I would actually look at some of their short animations as well and include it in that, which is why I hadn't seen this one myself. Now, his animated piece is The Running Man, which is the second in this. So there's a piece before it and a piece after it. And I thought rather than just watching his 10-minute piece, we'd watch the whole thing just to see what else was on there in Neo Tokyo. And yeah, there was something interesting going on there. Now, as I said, I am used to this style of animated film because it's part of what used to happen back in the day. There were loads of these kind of movies in which basically studios wanted to see what up-and-coming talent was like and would give spots out to people to come up with animations that would show off their style and their direction. And they would be like, oh, yes, I like this person's style and direction. I'm going to give them a shot at working on a project or a major film release. So they're kind of like showcase reels, giving people it's short animations. I mean, it happens all over the place in the animation industry. People kind of get a breakout by allowing them to do a short 10, 20-minute short. And if they're successful, then they go on to do bigger projects. And obviously Yoshiaki Kawajiri was successful. I don't know much about the other two. I never followed their work, and I didn't really research much into it because I'm here for the Yoshiaki Kawajiri. So what you got was a compilation of 3 directors basically showcasing what they could do, their style, their storytelling, their directional work, and seeing if people liked their style enough to kind of go, okay, we now trust you to work on a motion picture.
They are very different but very similar at the same time, like when you break it down. The first one is called I have it written down,
The Labyrinth.
Yeah, Mani Labyrinth Story. And well, before that even happens, we get some weird, I always do how I feel when I first go into these things, and the only word I can come up with is perturbed. We're in a weird jungle. And there's some weird slurpy noises.
Oh, that was so disturbing. I was like, whatever's going on, I don't want to be a part of it. I don't like it.
No, I can tell you what it sounded like, but I'd rather not because it was so odd. So we just go into this cave which looks like a mouth, and that was already uneasy. And then it starts with the first one and does a complete 180 and has this music, this lovely piano music. It's like, oh, this is pleasant. And with the Labyrinth one, I kind of got the feeling of kind of Fantasia, where it's like the action is being done by the music. Do you know what I mean? Like the music is telling the action what to do, which was nice. I liked it. The style of drawing was strange. It was like this flowy kind of painting kind of thing with sharp movements. It was... Yeah, it was kind of keep on your toes.
What I got from the Labyrinth, the minute it started, I was like, this animator, this artist is inspired by French animation. This is
Yes.
French expressionism. This is that old kind of like, was it Marilyn? Oh, what's the little French girl with the hat that begins with M?
Madeline.
Madeline. And other kind of like classic French illustrations. To the fact that the poster for the circus, they're not clowns in this. It's a Pierrot. And you'll find that a lot in anime. They don't have clowns, they have Pierrot and Pierrot-inspired characters. So the minute it started, I was like, this looks more French than Japanese. It's still slightly stylized, like character design-wise, but it looks very much more like early French animation than it does Japanese. As it goes on, you can see where the animation slightly changes and follows a more Japanese style. Like, I think it's how the labyrinth evolves, because at the front there's like kind of images coming into it and sharpness, but then there's a bit when the tracking down the labyrinth becomes more smooth and the colors, the shading improves, which is very much more a Japanese style of that fluidity through things, rather than Japanese early animation managed to make 2D look a lot more 3D. And you can see that from like an evolutionary point of animation, it's like a really interesting, it is basically a short experimental film, and you're trying to kind of piece together what the meaning. And I think it's one of those things that you could interpret this how you want to interpret the storyline. Like, you can interpret it as like, you know, small boy wants to escape his home and goes on a whimsical adventure because he's like, oh, it's just like he's having his own Alice in Wonderland moment, and he and his cat just go on a bit of adventure and things get weird, and like anything that resembles an adult is creepy and weird. But there's obviously a lot of industrialized imagery. I mean, it's the 80s in Japan when this came out, so it was very much that industrial kind of element, and just being like, you know, the real world's a bit dirty and dark and I want to go on a whimsical adventure, and there's a Pierrot and I'm going to follow that because that's a little bit more entertaining. But yeah, but it was so nice to see early like roots in animation style. I hadn't seen that a while in anime.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. You've literally said everything I was going to say. Alice in Wonderland, bit of Tim Burton mixed in there with the creepy clown circus. Like, you know, and the clown opens the tent, the kid goes in, and then it goes on to the next thing. And it's just like, okay.
Yep. Yeah, take it very much as an experimental piece rather than a linear story. It's about the journey. Which is weird because obviously this is called Neo Tokyo, but all these pieces are about the journey. The underlying theme seems to be the journey, and obviously a lot of anime at the time, it's about the nature of existence and like what is living and what is dead. So in this one, it's like you could even take it as like the boy and the cat have died, and this is them progressing through the afterlife, trying to work out if they should move on or stick around purgatory because it's more fun and entertaining than being on. But everything is like got that weird circle of life and death storyline and what it means to be alive. This is just the first one is the most experimental of it. It's like, yeah, you could wonder and sit there going, what is the meaning of this? And you can't take it too like linear. You can't be like, well, this is clearly about a boy who goes to the circus. And it's like, really, because those are some pretty monstery monsters in the circus. But the fact that he finds like peace and happiness and joy hanging out with monsters more than he does like just living under the sink while his mother ignores him, it's just like, actually it's a little bit like, you know, Where the Wild Things Are, but a very Japanese version of Where the Wild Things Are.
I was going to say the style of drawing as well, it kind of goes back to those kind of children book animation as well. That's what I was getting from it. But then we went on to the second one, which is The Running Man, which is one we should be more interested in because it's your director. But I found this more confusing than the first one. It's because it was just so out of order. It was so like there's more of a story because there's more talking in it, but it's like this guy is racing in a car and then they burst into flames and he wakes up from a bad dream and then there's a race like Alita styley, and then that starts going wrong, but then he's in the room with the guy and he starts screaming, and then they're back to the race, then back to the guy, and then back to the race, then he comes off the track and he explodes. It's just like, what?
Okay, I found this more linear than the first one. I found this makes more sense.
I thought less open
to interpretation.
I think that the most relatable part of it was Archer was in it. The detective guy. I was like, oh, Archer.
Oh, okay. So this is a pretty good example of Yoshiaki Kawajiri's art direction. Not maybe his, because his movies, they evolve over time with the linear storytelling. This is him experimenting, but he does play with kind of like boundary ideas and things. You'll see it as it goes. For me watching this, I was like, this is Yoshiaki Kawajiri. I can tell this. His heavy use of shading on characters' faces. There's a lot of darkness in his work, but at the same time, you can clearly see everything. So it's dark and it's gritty, but there is so much shading on their faces, so you can really see every single crease of stress and emotion and just all etched into their faces, which I love. And he's got these kind of like block out colour use. But this was basically, I always just thought it was a story of a guy who went to interview this amazing racer. And it's told, like, the end is kind of told at the beginning, and then it flashbacks to him trying to get to know the guy. And it's all like this weird death rally thing. And basically, this death rally is like these racers push themselves to the extreme to stay in this. And a lot of them are going to die on the track. But the amount of mental and physical pressure it puts on their body just means that they keep packing on bits of technology to start making them part machine so that they can continue to compete in this race. So where does the line stop between them being human and machine? But at the same time, like, once you push your body past a certain limit, where do you push your mind to? If you start pushing your mind past the limitations of flesh, then that's where this element of, like, he connects with something psychic, which is why, like, his brain starts developing into another stage of human evolution. And the person going from the interview and telling the story is like, he moved into a next stage of humanity by doing these races. And so he kind of flashes back to when the guy is clearly should be brain dead by this point. It should be physically dead, yet something is still, there is energy, and it's mixed in with some of those Shinto beliefs and even like beliefs in the Western society where when we die, where does our energy go? Because energy can never be destroyed. It can only be changed into, changed and stuff. So when we die, where does all the electrons that pulse through our body, because we've got power in our bodies, go? And he should be brain dead, but the machine is still keeping him alive, and the energy circuits are feeding into each other, and the brain is just going. So the race continues, and he basically profoundly breaks another barrier of human consciousness and can astro project into the past, the future, and can see the spirits and the energy of other drivers. But by that point, he's so lost his humanity and his consciousness, he can't stop racing by that point. He has to keep driving. So even when he sees the others going past him, he's like, I will race to beat that. And it's like, you're no longer even racing actual physical races. You are now racing whatever thing you are seeing in this next field. You're now racing the concept of a racer and the concept of what a human can be, until, like, literally his mind and his powers just rip through anything, because whatever technology exists in this world is not strong enough to contain whatever's gone on in his mind. That's what I assumed it was about.
It's more than I got. Seriously, I was just like, I don't know, because like you say, the end was at the beginning, but then he woke up from it as if it was a bad dream. So was he predicting the future, or was that just nothing to do with it? Or and then the mixed in, as you called it, the interview. I didn't see it as an interview at all. I don't know what I saw it as, because I wasn't interpreting it. But it was like, it was a mixture of the race mixed with him watching this guy just completely, I don't know, like he was making glass break, he was making furniture levitate, and it's like, right. And then back to the race, and he races, everyone dies in the race, but he just keeps going until he explodes. Now, the animation of the fire was beautiful. Yeah. That was lovely animation. I liked it where, like, the the bits of the car were bouncing and the fire was following it. That was really pretty. But I loved the use of the music, because you didn't hear the explosion. It wasn't a silent thing to music. It was talking and there was sound effects. But as soon as the explosion was happening, all sound effects cut out and it was just music. And I really liked that, the kind of difference between the two, because it made it more impactful, I think, seeing it, not hearing it. Having the music that didn't quite go with what was happening, because the music was lovely and peaceful, whereas what was going on was a man was dying. So, and I don't know, I like to think that I'm deep enough to interpret things, but things like this is just a little bit too weird for me. Like, obviously there has to be some sort of mindset that you have to be able to, like you've seen enough of these kind of films and you've studied movies and stuff, that you are able to say, okay, well, I know this from this film, I know this from this film, so I can put it into this film and interpret it this way. Whereas I'm like, I like Groundhog Day, that was a good film. Bill Murray's funny. And so, I don't really watch experimental impressionists kind of Frenchy films like this.
I've got to admit, I don't really like French cinema as a whole. It's not my cup of tea. I don't really like experimental or impressionist cinema. I like Japanese cinema, and I don't even I'm not that big on some of the early Japanese stuff. I like this one, but I like science fiction that has a deeper meaning in it. I don't know, I just see things like this, but I have studied those other forms of cinema, so I have watched stuff to kind of go, okay, I get some foundation in this, but getting that foundation and applying it to anime has always been like the thing I want to do. I don't know, it seemed to make sense to me. It was like it was a guy who wanted to go in and watch this amazing racer and then tell his story. And as he was watching the story unfold, he realised that the person that he was telling the story of was going on some random, like, not random, but kind of interesting journey of, like, what it means to be human. And once he'd pushed his body past his limits, he realised that he pushed his mind there, hence, like, getting that psychic connection and allowing things to, like, levitate. But he's like, he should essentially have been brain dead. I don't know, I felt like, it was, I like it. I felt that the plot was more obvious than you're making it out, but maybe I've obviously watched quite a lot of Japanese experimental shorts in my time.
Well, that's it, and I haven't. So I watch more obvious, but I'm a comedy person, that's more my deal. So experimental ooey fancy films aren't really something that I seek out in my everyday life.
No, but I like it in this state because they take those elements that I'm not a big fan of, like the pretty experimental, like when it's being too art house, and I'm sitting there going, this is too art house for me. This is getting a little pretentious for my liking. What I like about the format of Neo Tokyo is I never felt any of the pieces were pretentious. I felt like they were concise. They did what they want. They had lovely animation. They had great world building. There's so much set up in these small stories. And even this one, it's cyberpunk, but it's industrial cyberpunk. And there's a big difference because cyberpunk can be like very clean and futuristic, but it's also dystopian. This was like, there's dystopia and then there's industrial. This is just a dirty, messed up, dark place, and everything's starting to like even rust in the future. But like there's wonderful cityscapes, and the board like doing the advertising on and stuff, and it's a very lived-in world, and it's set up in such a short amount of time.
Maybe I'm just an ignorant slut. But the third film I liked. Out of the three, this was probably my favourite. Even though the first one had a cat, this one was probably the one that I thought, I held on to a bit longer. And we are in a jungle that's like full of water, and we have a guy that tells another guy that the construction cancellation has been ordered, and then we see that the title is Construction Cancellation Order.
Yep.
So, well, you set that up pretty well.
Yep. Definitely says what it's on the tin, basically.
Absolutely. But yeah, this one was just that level of disturbing that it's subtle at first and it just gets worse and worse, and I like that kind of build up. Yeah, it's a guy who goes to tell a construction site that's basically run by robots, that it's been cancelled, and the only human there is the foreman, but the foreman isn't there anymore, and we find out that the foreman, well, we assume he got killed because he leaves a message saying, this robot's going to kill me. So, and then this poor guy is like, okay, these robots are cray-cray. They're not listening to me. They're wasting all our money by blowing up. I've got to stop this. And then right at the end, when he gets to the point of stopping it, it's like, hey, we're going to carry on with construction now. And he's like, no, too far gone. I'm getting rid of this. Screw that. Yeah, again, it still had that essence of confusion where it's like more visual than someone explaining to you what's happening. You can just see that the monotony of the same thing happening over and over again, and the deterioration of like his food and the robot, and just he's been there for so long that he's just going insane, basically. He's obviously lonely for the amount of porn and tissues around his bed.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to do. Yeah, and this poor bloke, I mean, I thought he was killed at one point when the robot swung the wrecking ball at him and he ripped his back open, which is what it looked like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's dead. And he's like at the window. I'm like, he's not dead.
You know, I'm assuming the robots patched him a bit together, but
I don't know, but yeah, it was disturbing on a different level of what Yoshiaki Kawajiri's was, because his was disturbing in a visual way. Like you say, with the way it's drawn and like the intenseness of the face and the veins in the hands and yeah, all that kind of stuff. That's what made that one disturbing. What made this one disturbing was the idea of it.
yeah.
The idea of the robots taking over. You're the lone human. No one's listening to you. No one's doing what you're saying. It's just carrying on the same thing every day, getting worse and worse. And I think that was what made me go, ooh.
Yeah. I think this is the best of the three. I know Yoshiaki Kawajiri is my favourite, but this is the best piece. I mean, I love that they're all about visual storytelling rather than like just blathering exposition and telling you what's going on. There was enough dialogue in this one to make it really obvious what was going on. And it's like this massive... You didn't realise just how massive this construction project was. And I love the fact that this is so full of like social commentary and cultural relevance, because it's all about a richer white power, because Japan sees himself in that kind of framework as well, going into a third world country and going, we'll bring you money and we'll do this big redevelopment project. But the country they go into, whatever fictional country they go into, is obviously like politically unstable. And because of a military coup, this massive construction project is like, we have to cancel this because we're losing money now doing this, because the current government is like, we do not want you in our country. We do not want you excavating and digging and getting a foothold in our country, because we don't want a foreign power with that much tied that strongly to our economy. And you're like, okay, yes, great. Wonderful setup. Even down to what I found very interesting is the new foreman's character design was very reminiscent of how Western animators in the old Looney Tunes cartoons and used to draw Japanese, and the Japanese were seen as the villains. So they used to draw them in this very stereotypical, they were short, they always had like buck teeth or extra teeth, they would have round eyes with big round glasses. And they were drawn very stereotypical when Bugs Bunny was fighting off the Japanese. So to choose to represent the foreman in the way he was stereotyped, it was very much like, okay, this is about a foreign power invading a different country and not being welcomed there. So you had that layer to it as well. Even to the way like the people who dropped him off treated him, and they were like, yeah, bye. So then he goes into this massive industrial complex, and you realise just how big it is, but also just how much has been going wrong. So you've got the nature of like, is it better to send in all these robots to do these jobs when actually without anyone to supervise them? And it's obviously in a future, in a more technologically advanced world, and there is the question of like, how much responsibility do you give AI? How competent and how much do you allow AI to evolve? Because it evolved to a point where it was like, right, we're really competent making this thing. It's like, well, are you really? Because a lot of this is not looking so good. But at the same time, you cannot get past your original directive of make this project come true. So they haven't gone to the next director, and the kind of like service bot that's walking him around is like, no, we've got a set directive, we must follow this pattern. Again, nice bit of commentary on the way, like, Japan is a hegemonic society. You're all cogs in the machine. You do not stray from the directive, so you've got your position within society, but using robots to tell that kind of social history. And this guy goes in, at first is like, nice tours, and he's like, well, this is, you really need to listen to me. But then you get the sense that obviously this robot knows more and is actually not as stuck, and is also quite insane. And I love the food. You got a nice meal on the first day, and suddenly nuts and bolts were turning up in the food, and by the end of it he was just being fed just complete metallic scraps. And it's like, this robot had no interest in keeping this guy around. He just wanted to fulfill a directive. And the fact that our foreman then does challenge it and shows human desperation, ingenuity, like the things that make you human, that's a concept outside of what this robot is also doing. And the fact that the robot's just like, no, you're not going to stop the work going on here because we've decided we don't actually need you and we're building our own city. And it's like, it's evolved so far. There's an inner beast and an inner heart to this that's like, we have gone beyond what you want. And it's, again, those ideas of like, if technology becomes self-aware and takes over, it will not see a need for the human element and that corrupted directive it had, going to the point where it's like, we're just going to keep, and when you realise how big this place is, if it keeps going, it's not going to care who gets in its way. It's just going to keep spreading out until everything is just one functioning industrial complex, which again harks back to what the Western world thought of Japan when Japan in the Second World War was trying to spread out and occupy in that very hegemonic way of like, we will all be part of this big like imperial machine that is Japan and swallow up other things and make it like us. Oh, I love a bit of social commentary in my sci-fi.
And then it goes back to the little girl and the cat in the circus. She hugs the weird guy, and the end.
Yep. I always thought it was a little boy.
Oh, girl, boy, I don't know.
I read boy, but you know what? Doesn't matter what gender they are. They were having a weird whimsical adventure with a creepy clown.
All I know was cat.
Yeah. Big fluffy cat.
That's what I got. Big floofy.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all I got from it. But yeah, so it was all right. Yeah. Obviously, you got more out of it than I did.
Yes, I feel that I was like, ooh, this is really interesting and complex, and I could write an essay on this. Is it the best? No, there's better shorts out there, there's better animated pieces out there, but it's some really interesting ideas to like be looked at. And there's even interesting, like, if you want to try and loop them together, like which bits are like based in reality. Is Running Man set in the same world as, like, Work Order, I'm calling it? Is it after it or is it before it? Is the jungle that you see right at the beginning with the squelchy weird noises the evolution of what happens here, and the nightmare has got so real that you just like you flow into, okay, we've got to escape from the reality of this never ending technological weird industrial takeover bid. And you're like, is that how, because obviously they could be connected by more than just like the spiritual idea of, do we need humanity, where's humanity and where's non-humanity? It could be that there's an evolutionary. I mean, I'd love to know what the weird squelchy noises are. I would love to know why there's a weird, like, He-Man style cave with teeth in the jungle going, hey, like, and then it's just like, I'm just going to close my mouth now and you'll never know what's happening in this weird place under here.
Well, as you're being plunged into darkness right now.
I know. The sun is setting in my and I haven't got any lights on in my living room, so I'm like, and it's dark.
I can literally see half your face and the light from your headphones. That's it.
Oh,
That's what I see.
Because of what we're using. Normally I appear on the screen. Yeah, no, you're just gonna have to cope with I'm sitting in the dark talking to you.
Creepy. So, what do you want to give this out of 5?
Ooh, I think maybe a 3, because it's really good from a study point of view. It's wonderful to see. There's a lot to discuss and think about and analyse in it. But I do feel it's partly dated and it hasn't got an entirely clear picture of what is going on. And unless you want to analyse and look at it from a social history point of view, it's it's an alright movie, but I think
Three what?
Oh, let's see. Should we just go three fluffy cats on an adventure?
Flee, fluffy kitties. Okay, I'm gonna give it a 2. I enjoyed the different art styles. It was interesting in that way, the way that 3 people interpreted their stories and how they wanted them to come across. But like I say, it's too much interpreting for me. I want to say I like things obvious. I like that essence of trying to figure out stuff for yourself, but I like more context in what's going on, like less visual, more story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to explain.
No, I get it.
I don't like it completely obvious and in your face, but I don't like it so out there that you have to interpret the whole thing. I think that's where I'm coming from. So yes, I give it 2 fluffy cats. Social media.
My social media is coming on just like a crazed racing driver that's slowly going like brain dead and psychic and just going, whoa, is it now? Is it the future? Is it the past? I've exploded.
So basically, meow, boing, boing, boing. That was the wheel coming off.
Yeah, I gathered that. I was thinking,
it's my brilliant sound effects again.
Yeah, but I knew that. I from your sound effects, I was able to interpret the visuals.
I know.
I'm good at this.
My social media is coming in on. Well, first of all, me and Luna are going to go into the mirror. Here we go. Meow. And out comes my social media. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Ta-da.
Beautiful.
Don't know why it always needs a da-da. Like,
why not give it some flourish?
Do you know, I'm going to be really professional this week and say, hey guys, if you like what we do, why not check out some of our other podcasts that we've done? In our playlists, we have done many. We have done Battle Angel Lita. We've done series such as Neogenesis and Madoka and Parasite most recently. Other films we've done are... Lizzie, can you remember what we've done?
Vampire Hunter D, the original. Yep. And we've done Lensman for our Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Back in the past, we've done Armitage 3. Love that movie.
Yep, ND Geist.
ND Geist. Dominion Tank Police. Tank Police!
Tank Police! So yes, we've done many things. Go back and have a look. Please subscribe and support us. We appreciate any subscriptions we get, as well as comments. We do love your comments and we do try to reply. So, that's me being professional this week. Woo woo! Ring that bell. Click that like button. Whoop whoop!
You've watched a lot of YouTube recently, haven't you?
I have. Too much YouTube. Say bye-bye, Lizzie.
So for now, this is a Weeaboo saying Jane.
And from a newbie, it's meow. Boing, boing, boing.